Welcome back to Living in the Pacific Northwest with Hal Byrd. I'm Hal Byrd, and this is Hans Bruhner, the HBs. And today we're going to be talking about second homes and vacation homes. So if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. So as you may notice, the background is a little different here today because we are at the coast. We're on the Washington coast today on the Long Beach Peninsula, and we have Hans here, who is would you consider yourself a new resident of Long Beach?
Well, about 2.5 years ago, I bought my house here at the coast and been splitting my time between Long Beach and Vancouver. So, and as a lender and a second homeowner for the first time in my life, I feel qualified. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Hal Byrd. I'm a licensed realtor and certified relocation specialist in the Northwest. And this is Hans Bruhner.
Hey, Hans Bruhner with Barrett Financial Group and mortgage broker. Been doing this for a long time.
While many of you know me as a Southwest Washington expert, there's a very specific part of Southwest Washington that I specialize in, which is the Clark County area of Southwest Washington. And we are more south than this part of Washington, but the Long Beach Peninsula coast area is way more west and still considered Southwest Washington to locals. So whether you're looking at literally the Pacific Ocean that's behind us, I don't know if you guys can hear the waves crashing, and and then there's dunes, which is a very common aspect of the geography on the coastal parts of Washington and Oregon, and I guess Northern California too, right?
Northern California, not so much on the dunes.
Okay.
But Central Oregon for sure.
Yeah. So the information we're going to be talking about in today's video is partially about how you can get a second home. And we're not just talking about the Long Beach Peninsula. While it's beautiful and it's been a place that we've recently fallen in love with thanks to Hans. He's been asking us to come visit for 2 years and we finally took him up on it. But this can apply anywhere along the Pacific Northwest coast. So we're talking all the way from Southern Oregon to the Olympic Peninsula.
Yeah, so the deal is that it can, of course, apply anywhere in the country for a second home. And we, in lending, we have some specific criteria for a second home. So it should be at least 35 miles away from your primary residence. Mm-hmm. Since it's a second home, the weird part is you don't have to own a first home. Like I had a lot of people in Sonoma County, California own second homes and they rented in San Francisco. San Francisco was so expensive, they couldn't afford a home. So they bought their home in a vacation area. So second home is kind of, you got to figure out how it works for you, and you've got to talk to a professional to help figure out the best way to make that work.
So you could rent, consider your first home in lending?
Your primary residence. Yes.
Uh-huh. And that's what's factored into your DTI and be able to...
Yeah, it has to be 35 miles away from your first home, like I said. But like, let's say that you are a school teacher in Portland. Well, you're not going to be able to commute if you live in Cannon Beach or Long Beach, Washington. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be your second home because you can't make the commute on a daily basis. Mm. Any commute that far, it's just not going to make sense.
Gotcha. What made you want to buy a vacation home? Because you relocated from California to Vancouver.
Right.
And you were there for less than a year and you decided to buy a second home. Did you relocate to Vancouver thinking you might buy a second home, or how did it come about?
Well, the weird part is that we actually thought that we found Vancouver because we were looking for a second home and we were planning on keeping our California house. And then we decided that we were just going to move to Vancouver. So we already had it sort of planted in there. And when we made it out to the coast, we said, hey, let's take a look at second homes. We can invest some money in real estate here, and then we can maybe Airbnb it, make a couple of dollars that way, and have it sort of pay for our vacations, have our vacation home covered by others. Mm-hmm. It morphed for us. We ended up not doing that, mm-hmm. just because it was only 2 hours away, and so we used it all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are people that I know that travel across the country to their second homes, and other people that drive, 100 miles to their second home. So it's a very unique to you and how you want to use it.
So diving deeper into your interest in having not a second home that you have to fly across the country to visit, but one that was within 2 hours. What are some of the benefits that you noticed, or how did you end up using that? Like how are you splitting your time between Vancouver and Long Beach?
Well, that's really interesting because at first we thought we were going to Airbnb the house. And then we realized that we used it so often that we didn't want to Airbnb it. We didn't want to share it with anybody else. And it was becoming more of our house. So we would split our time however it felt, whatever we felt like. Like we spent Christmas here at the beach, and the weather, a lot of people would think the weather isn't great. Well, we love a good winter storm at the beach. So we spent Christmas here. And so 2-hour scenic drive away, it's like we never felt like it was that big of a deal. And people would always try and label it and say, oh, so it's your second home. And I go, well, no, I live in Vancouver and Long Beach. Mm-hmm. That's it. Like I just live in both of those places. I built an office in both houses, and that's what we do. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's different. That's the beauty, is it's going to be different for everybody as to why you want that second home or that vacation home.
And whether you use it primarily for investment or primarily for personal or any combination in between.
Right. Plus, I know that my wife has to be near the ocean and always wanted to retire near the ocean. And so, happy wife, happy life. You know what they say.
Well, you know what we say on this channel?
What?
Happy spouse, happy house.
Well, there you go. Okay, that's a nice little segue. I like that. So the deal is that we always thought, okay, this is going to be our ultimate destination when we retire, or maybe towards the end of my career, and who knows? Just that's what we thought.
And so did it become more like, well, why are we waiting to retirement? We could just live here full time now. Is that kind of the shift that happened mentally?
Are you trying to out me on YouTube? Yes. I've sold my house in Vancouver. I hired a great real estate agent, I'm just saying, and she sold it without even, she showed it to one person and sold. Hello. And so, yeah, we're moving here full time.
Did you want that? We don't have to put that on.
No, that's great.
Okay.
I kind of like that. I just thought that was funny.
I like this. I like it too.
But the deal is that, yeah, exactly. We decided that we didn't need to retire to be here full time.
To enjoy it.
Yeah. Because I was working in both spots anyway.
And you had family in the Portland metro area, so that was kind of a draw to be up here, but you still feel like you're close enough.
Yeah, and when we had a family reunion, people from Northern California, Nevada, Montana, people were coming from Utah, and we had it here, and we had, all these people. There was Airbnbs around that they could stay in. They could stay in our guest rooms, and I mean, heck, they could camp on our lawn if they wanted to. So it just worked out.
What's that 2023?
Exactly. So it just worked out. So it's working for us more and more.
And then would you say that your lifestyle feels more relaxed? Do you feel less stressed? Obviously you now have a happier wife. The more you're at the beach, what sort of value has having the second home brought?
It is a little bit more relaxed in that we're on beach time, but it just feels nice. I mean, to be able to just get up and go for a run on the beach and then sit down and get some work done, and maybe walk downtown and grab a bite to eat and then get a little bit more work done. So it's just I don't know. It feels like I'm semi-retired. Even though somebody said that to me and I took offense. Now I'm embracing that.
I did ask him when he bought the second house. I said, you're down there all the time. Are you semi-retired now?
He got downright offended.
He was super offended. But I meant it as a compliment, because the retired to me is that's the ultimate goal. If you can do enough things right and invest and be semi-retired where you work because you want to work, I mean, it's great. And that's a great thing about being in the real estate industry. So if you are looking to start a real estate career, or if you're looking to explore working with me and help with YouTube, and feel free to reach out. You can book a Zoom call with me, because that's one of the good things. I feel like all the clients that I work with through this channel are because I want to work with them, because people watch the channel, get to know me, like me. People watch your video and videos now, get to know you, like you, want to work with you, and it's the same thing. So sometimes I feel like I'm semi-retired in the sense that I'm only doing the work that I want to do. I'm not taking on clients that are a headache for me, like a lot of realtors do. But yeah, I think that that's the ultimate compliment to live the semi-retired life.
I'm taking it. I like it.
So let's talk about the potential for rental income and investment properties as a second home.
Okay. So it's interesting because right when I bought my house here in Long Beach, we were able to do a second home. The financing was the same rates as a primary residence. And I really loved that. And right after we bought our house, literally right after, they changed the rules and they made the pricing just basically the same as an investment property. So it's higher rates and a little bit more fees than if it's if it's your primary residence. And everybody looked at the negatives, but I kind of looked at that as a positive. The positive is that it's going to cost me the same whether I call it a second home or an investment property. Now I've got some choices. If we call it an investment property, then we're looking at potential rental income to offset that the payment, and it's easier to qualify.
So if you have a investment property, let's say you buy an existing Airbnb, so it has rental history, you can show it, and how does that count?
That gets really complicated because we as an industry, if I have 100 different lenders I can go to, there's maybe 3 or 4 that will allow me to do finance it as an Airbnb. When we say investment property, we mean like renting long-term rental.
So what about, I know that there's a duplex for sale on the peninsula right now in Long Beach. Maybe you buy the duplex and you have the vacation side for yourself, and then you have a long-term tenant in the other.
Well, that's the beauty of having the second home be the same price as investment property. As a second home, you actually can't call that, you can't do a duplex or a triplex, you can't do units. So now we have to call it an investment property, but there's no real downside because the pricing is the same, and then we get to count income on both sides of it.
Gotcha.
You can once you own the property, what you do with it, is it can be a little different. If it morphs into an Airbnb down the road, that can happen.
So buying an existing rental home and converting it to an Airbnb could be a good strategy for some people.
Yeah. And the hardest part, it's really not that hard to do it. We just have to figure out how it's going to work for you. But the deal is that if somebody's trying to buy an existing Airbnb and they're trying to buy the clientele that's coming in, let's say, and we can't really use that, like
future bookings.
Future bookings, exactly. You do that so well. You distill what I'm trying to say.
You might think that I'm a professional,
It's, yeah.
So none of this is tax, financial, or legal advice. This is all informational and education. So if you have been flirting with the idea of possibly owning a second home, we wanted to not only talk to someone who has purchased a second home / vacation property, but also someone who can help you finance it in 49 states across the country. And we'll put all of Han's contact info right here on the screen so that you can see it. So I'd highly recommend reaching out to him.
And one thing I would add on that, although we are not giving financial or tax advice or legal advice, you might want to talk to your financial your accountant or your enrolled agent, whoever does your taxes, because you may be able to write off the mortgage interest on a second home if you itemize your taxes. So that's a lot to ask your financial advisor or your tax consultant.
So before we move away from financing, I also want to talk about down payments. What do down payments look like? Are they different for the second home loans versus investment loans?
That's a great differentiator. So you can put down as little as 10% if it is a second home. So if you qualify just fine, you might want to buy it as a second home with 10% down. As an investment property, you're going to need to put 20% down minimum, and you're going to get much better financing options with 25% or more down. So that's a big deal. So 10% down may be better for you. So second home option may be better.
So contact Hans to ask your questions about what options are going to be best for you, especially if you have a property in mind. If you are looking at buying a vacation home or an investment property and it is outside of my service area, I can interview and refer you either to someone that's already in my network or interview the right agent for you and put you in touch with agents across the country and internationally. So even if you want to buy vacation homes in the Dominican Republic or Italy, I can put you in touch with agents. So you've got Hans to help you with the lending in 49 states, and you've got me to help you worldwide with referrals to other agents, especially if you want to sell your home when you're relocating.
Well, and one other thing that you really want to think about is that this is, sort of a generic overview and not specific advice. I think about those, those drug ads on TV, like those prescription drug ads, right? They're like, hey, you need this. And then you show up at your doctor. The doctors probably hate that. Hey, I need this.
They 100% do.
Right. I mean, so like when you come up, just be open. And so the goal is that we listen to you, and then we tailor it specifically to you. There's no one size fits all or one type of advice fits all. It's going to be tailored to you, and we know how to use it. We're just kind of giving you a general overview.
Mm-hmm. So once you get lending sorted and you're pre-approved and you're going to start looking for homes, it's very important to work with someone who is familiar with that specific community, because there are a lot of considerations when you're looking in places that have more water. I have a lot of clients who are looking at living close to the Columbia River. They want a view, and they're very concerned about flood insurance. When's the last time the river flooded? And so we can go through the FEMA maps together, and I can provide you that information because I'm familiar with Clark County and the Portland metro area. Here, for instance, you have dunes and some places that are actually further inland but are lower lying, and they flood throughout the year. And so you want to work with someone who's going to know those considerations, which is why I would recommend reaching out to me to get a referral for a realtor no matter what market you're looking at. And we can work together as a team, myself, you, and your local realtor in the vacation market. So that's something that you did. You got a local realtor here.
Yeah.
What were some of the considerations that you looked for when you were started looking at properties? You narrowed down the location you wanted. You were financially pre-approved.
Right.
Did you pre-approve yourself? Can I ask you that?
I didn't pre-approve myself, but I worked closely with my partner Felena, who did.
Well, you knew you were qualified, I guess, better than most.
Yeah.
Look at the mirror, folks.
Jared said he looked in the mirror and just said, "Are you qualified?"
Oh yeah. I'm like, who's qualified? Who has two thumbs and is
This
qualified?
guy.
This guy. Like, that's so bad, but it's true. Well, it's funny because, the big consideration is, like, for me, it was easy because my wife needs to be near the ocean, period.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you want the mountains? Do you want hiking? What do you want? And then what you want is if you're going to rent it out on Airbnb or VRBO or something, then you're going to market it to the same people. It's actually kind of easy because, they want
The same thing you want.
the same thing you want.
We're not all that different. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what was it like working with the local realtor? Did you buy the first home you saw?
No, she's kind of awesome because I called her on a house and it's her own listing. And so, like, most realtors would be like, hey, I got a call on my own listing. And she goes, oh, you don't want that house. And that was after she talked to me for 5 minutes. And then she kind of made some suggestions, and I thought, okay, it instilled me with confidence because I tried to call 3 different people, and nobody instilled me with confidence until I talked with Cindy. So the beautiful thing about that is then we got to know each other. We went out on and looked, and we almost made an offer on a place that we would have been happy in, but it wasn't exactly what we wanted. And she called us with an off-market listing and said, I think this is the one you want. And she was right.
Mm-hmm. The importance of working with a local realtor cannot be underestimated.
Cannot be. I'm a huge pro realtor.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 3 decades as a lender, and I couldn't be more pro realtor.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So earlier in the video, you mentioned that you bought your Vancouver home as a second home initially with the plans of keeping your California home as the primary residence potentially. So for people who are watching this channel, they are watching from all over the country, and many of them are thinking about relocating to the Northwest. If they aren't quite at a place where they've found a job or remote work yet, but they want to start looking for a home, if they're in the financial position, they could buy a second home in the Northwest and keep their home whether they rent or own in their home state. Is that correct?
Correct. It's always a little bit difficult, when you own a home and you're trying to transition to the next home. So buying it, because if you're relocating in a big move, then you're able to buy it as a second home, which is what I did. Mm-hmm. And literally during the escrow, I thought I'm going to sell my my primary residence, but nothing changed. We just bought it as a second home. Now we own 2 homes. Then the minute we moved, we put the other house on the market. So I said that my house here is my second home, but I guess it's actually my second.
Oh, it is technically your second home. We were also talking before we were off camera about not necessarily shopping at the top of your budget. So you might be pre-approved for $750,000, but maybe you buy a $400,000 to $500,000 house and leave room in your budget. Do they have to have room in their debt to income ratio for the home state house to be able to buy a second home in Vancouver?
Yes, and that's where it does. You need to be able to, if your debt ratios can handle 2 houses, then you're in great shape. And then we buy it as a second home. It's the easiest way to go. If it doesn't, then you might want to buy it as an investment property. Or you could show your other house that you're leaving as an investment property. You could turn that into an investment property so that you don't count that in your debt ratios. But when we were looking, we were actually looking at more expensive homes, and we realized we just kind of scaled back because we realized we didn't need all that house. And that's what ultimately led us to be able to buy a second home. It wasn't a plan, but it worked out really nicely for us.
So for people who maybe are concerned about the market, because there's always concerns about the market, whether we were in a seller's market or a slower market, high interest rate, low interest rates, people are always concerned no matter what's going on. You ever notice that?
I noticed that.
So shopping well below their budget could also give room for that second home, which I think is something to keep in mind, because it's easier to go in with that forethought instead of buying the home at the top of your budget and then realizing, well, in order to do this, we'd have to refinance, or it's going to be 10 years before we can buy the second home that we wanted. And so I think it's nice to have this video to help people go in, like, start with the end in mind.
Yeah, I agree. And not only that, but I see in the run up to 2008, I saw people trying to get as much as they could get, and the market was fueling that. And then in 2010 and beyond, the last 13 years, people, I'll say, you qualified for this, and they'll say, yeah, I'm buying this. And I like that. That's just smart. Don't buy at the edge of your means anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what we did, was we were like, hey, let's not get crazy. And then because of that, it opened up opportunities we didn't even think about till 6 months later.
Right. And I think that's the nice thing about working with anyone on our team, working with Hans's team, is that we never pressure people to go beyond where they're comfortable. We have people, you've called me up and you've been like, whatever price they want. And I'm like, okay. And then they're like, we want 600. And I'm like, you've got it. Like, let's see if we can do 550. Like, that's, the mindset that I think we have when it comes to making sure that we're taking care of people more than anything, like making sure our clients are comfortable and happy and in the long term, and really having a long-term vision that we want our clients to become friends. We hang out with our clients, and we just want to create an environment that feels like a family-friendly, encouraging, warm, supportive environment for making such a big purchase, whether it's a second home or relocation.
Right. That's
what we're here for.
Yeah, I always say if I run into one of my clients at the grocery store, I would prefer a hug over a slap. So just saying, let's be friends.
I'm sure you get a lot of hugs.
I do.
So now that you've been through the process and you've lived with having 2 homes, do you have any tips or advice for people that are watching?
Yeah, it's funny because we came here and stayed in a hotel and stayed for the weekend. And then we were going to go searching for a property. I remember it was a Monday morning. We woke up and it was raining, and we were staying on the beach, and I was going to go for a run. And I thought, well, I'm still going to go for a run. So I went for a run. I'm soaking wet. I loved it. And so, and then later that day, my wife and I went out to the end of the peninsula. We were standing on the beach, and we could walk from the bay side over 3-mile hike over to the ocean side. And we just said, this is it. And so, not everybody would agree with me that like a rainy beach in Washington is where they want to be. But that's where I wanted to be, and that's where my wife wanted to be. So it worked for us. But basically, the bottom line is visiting. Go there and visit there and stay and see what you think.
That's good. And do it with the mindset of, like, I think thinking like a local. So when you're here, whether it's here or wherever you go, I think 2 things. That's one, the benefit of buying a second home that's within driving distance is that you can be more heavy on your own personal research. And the second thing is that if you try to live like a local, plan your day there. If you work remote during the week there, and just see how it feels to live as close as you would to it when you're vacationing.
Yeah, I mean, if you stay there for a week and you work remote and it all works for you, then maybe you're a second home buyer. And if you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be strapped here, I'd really rather go to Italy one year and Colorado the next year and Hawaii the next, like, well, maybe it's not for you. So you just figure that out.
One thing we didn't talk about as you were saying that I thought of too is like, you could buy a vacation home and then use it as an Airbnb entirely and plan to retire.
Yeah.
Later on. So use it as an investment, let other people pay it off. And then when you're ready to retire there, maybe you have no mortgage and going back to being financially smart. I think there's a lot of ways to play it.
Real estate has gone up, historically. So if you look at it over the last 70 years, it's gone up. And sure, there's been times when it dips, but those are like fewer and farther between. And so if you get in now and you make it work for you financially and you're paying it off as you go, and your other house, your main house is accruing equity, then when you sell that one, you're in a much better position to retire. If you can get into your retirement home before you retire, well before you retire, that's just financially sound.
Yeah.
Super sound.
Super sound. We could make like a little mix. Now I just need a DJ. Like on Portlandia when they say DJ direct deposit. Have you seen that? So today we talked about the opportunities to have a second home, maybe some potential locations for a second home, how to finance it, down payments, ways to be creative with it. I think we covered pretty much everything.
I think so.
And if you have any questions, if you want to see if this is an option for you, both mine and Hans's contact information will be in the description below and on the screen here. So feel free to reach out to either of us if you need any assistance at all. We'd be happy to help.
Yep, happy to help.
All right, so we'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.
Ciao.
And this is Hans Bruhner.
And I'm a mortgage broker, and I've been doing this for about 33 years. What did I do that?
Because I always remember when we met, and then it was like, oh, you've been doing this for like as long as I've been alive. And it just reminded me of that when you said 33 years.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know if that's I think I'd rather say, hey, Hans Byrd with Barrett Financial Group and mortgage broker, been doing this for a long time.